Welcome to my SIGGRAPH 2020 talk, Augmented and Virtual Reality Application Design for Immersive Learning Research using Virtual Nature, Making Knowledge Beautiful and Accessible with Information Fidelity. Hello, I'm Maria Harrington. I'm an Assistant Professor of Digital Media at the University of Central Florida, where I investigate virtual nature as an artifact using augmented reality and virtual reality tools to really better understand the perceptual phenomena as it relates to the human-computer environment interactions that cause emotional responses, actual learning, not perceived, and aesthetic experiences. Basically, it's about making knowledge beautiful. Now, for those of you who are too impatient to listen to 20 minutes, you can go to the Harrington lab at my itch.io account and download both of these applications and start playing with them. So go right ahead. This is not art. This is not environmental art. It is a knowledge visualization. So what you are looking at is representative of an information fusion of multiple data sets to create the most accurate or high truth value visualization of that information. And so when you walk through this environment, you feel like you are actually in the real environment because all of the plants are in the correct locations. They're dispersed in the right number and right density, and they have the right combination of different species. So this is not an artistic process. There's no artistic license here. Virtual Arboretums. My first project is the Virtual UCF Arboretum. It's a large 100-hectare or 247-acre representation of the real UCF Arboretum. We've used plant population GIS data with terrain data, water body data, and even enhanced with drone images when we had it to create the highest level of accuracy of visualization as possible. It is not art, it's not a fantasy game, it's not a 360 video, it's not a point cloud, we didn't use LiDAR. It is not also your traditional GIS visualization that's abstract and it's just little dots on a map. These applications visualize 3D botanically correct plant models in the correct locations to create an immersive experience of nature in game engines for use in augmented reality and virtual reality. It also means that unlike the other methods, because it is driven by data, you can represent past realities as well as future realities of what this world will look like. Virtual nature in VR is an immersive, interactive, and multimodal data visualization. The Virtual UCF Arboretum works in the HTC Vive headsets and has been integrated with a treadmill and projector for research in collaboration with the Department of Psychology at UCF. Very exciting work is being conducted now virtually due to COVID, but all of this is perhaps going to yield results of how important nature is through the virtual studies of nature. There's also an interactive component where the application is integrated, the game engine level is integrated with a website that acts like a field guide, a plant facts and educational stories with multimedia information, making learning easy at any point of interest. This website stands alone as well, and it was published at PBS Learning Media and aligned with educational standards. So teachers may find this beneficial and useful. All of it was launched in 2018, and it runs as an Unreal Engine application. How did we do it? We started with a GIS database of the plants and the different locations, the neighborhoods or the community types are represented as areas on a map. We chose a 100-hectare area that had the most diversity of plants. We also fused it with drone flyover photographs whenever we had them. We used the plant population data to represent the distribution of each plant in our plant atlas by location. So we're fusing all this different information together to create from the bottom up a high information accuracy, high truth value representation. It really is not environmental art, but layers of information visualized in an immersive environment. And the information fidelity is partly the result of the truth value, of the completeness, and the accuracy and the assurance of all this data. That's what makes it quite different. Another component are these botanically correct 3D plant models. And while new scanning technology may replace this process, I think that it's important to talk about the careful work and the collaborative nature, because no matter what, we need to vet and verify with the domain experts what these models should represent in terms of detail and complexity. Essentially, what we did was we went out into the field and we had very careful fieldwork research with the artists and the scientists to gather measurements and data and textures and photographs, and then carefully create these 3D models with references to achieve the highest level of photorealism we could. Then there was an aesthetic review and a scientific review that was collaborative and iterative to identify errors and correct them. And this was to ensure the accuracy of the models. The information fidelity here is partly the result of the truth value represented in the completeness, the accuracy, and assurance of this visual information. Another layer, because we're dealing with education and learning, all of these points of interest are self-exposing. Basically, the plant field guide atlas is the integrated into the Unreal level. And the application design combines the multimodal signals of the environment in the game with the semantics embedded in the website. They're integrated in this application to allow an interactive user interface and experience. So the immersive objects self-expose information at the moment of curiosity, and they're responsive to that individual. You don't need a teacher. It is, you click on it and you get information. So we go to this idea of dioramas. What if dioramas could talk? What if they were interactive? Virtual dioramas are, in effect, the application of some of these virtual nature developments. So shown here is the AR Perpetual Garden App. It was used in a 2019 study at the Carnegie Museum of Natural History in the Hall of Botany. And the virtual diorama here cascades out of the real diorama and covers the entire gallery floor to create an immersive, multimodal, interactive experience of the actual forest. So it transformed the gallery floor, this gray carpet, into a woodland springtime bloom. It's immersive, interactive, multimedia, and a knowledge visualization. It's actually visualizing the knowledge of the diorama. Inspired by the traditional dioramas, which are knowledge artifacts, they're three-dimensional representations of data, information, and knowledge used to communicate the science and the history to the public. Many times these artifacts are annotated with signs or stories. They are further communicated with docents or teachers. Sometimes even the expert is available to explain and put into context and use story to communicate the information to the public. But this was the beginning and the baseline design, starting point of my design, to try to understand what the best practices were and what the design features were that needed to be in the immersive applications to actually be effective. Here's the AR Perpetual Garden app. It works inside or outside. It was launched in 2018 on the Apple iTunes and Google Play Store. It is unique in that it creates two visualizations of two different scenarios, one a woodland in balance and the other a woodland out of balance. And the woodland in balance data set represents a healthy woodland when there are not too many deer. Deer population is controlled. And the woodland out of balance is when there are too many deer and they're they eat all of the plants, setting off what is called a trophic cascade. And that is a chain reaction through the food web, where if you remove the plants, then the insects that feed on the plants disappear, and then the birds that feed on the insects disappear. There's a cascade, and that would not only impact the layout, but it would also impact the ambient bioacoustics, because the sounds of the insects and birds are different. So this virtual diorama, representing two different scenarios, tell two different stories, but they augment the real diorama and the real gardens at the Carnegie and at Powder Mill. Furthermore, it gives interactive access to facts and stories for learning. And this app was built in Unity, as well as AR Core and AR Kit for the two different platforms. You can use it in schools, in homes, or in backyards. So you can get down on the floor and look inside the plant, or see the spurs on the little violets. Right now you can download it. Both of these virtual nature models, the Virtual UCF Arboretum and the AR Perpetual Garden App, were the results of an interdisciplinary co-design process that consisted of four major steps. The first was the sourcing of the facts and the information, the scientific review. The second was an aesthetic review, where those facts and that information was visualized and turned into 3D models and environments, as well as other kinds of data types like ambient acoustics. And then the third step, it dealt with a collaborative, co-creative process between the artists and the scientists. This was an artistic, aesthetic, and scientific combined review process that iterated both from both dimensions of expertise to create the highest possible, most accurate visualization or artifact possible. And the last is your traditional user experience with your stakeholders and technical optimization process. You want that technical process. So the fourth step is really your user experience, iterative design process that most people are familiar with. The process, the design process, yields outputs, right? So I call this the expert learner user experience design process, or ELEX. Kind of cute, huh? ELEX. Okay, anyway. So the first one is facts and information is produced from the scientific sourcing and review. Those facts and that information that has been approved, vetted, and released goes to the artist. The artist then, to the best of their ability, creates the most aesthetic and accurate visualization, the highest level of realism, photorealism possible. They visualize those facts and that information to the best of their ability and craftsmanship. Then there's the co-design process with the artist and the scientist. It's an aesthetic scientific review. They're working together, quickly iterating out all of the errors. And the output of this process is a knowledge artifact visualized. Right, it's not information visualized, it's not data visualized, it's not scientific visualization. This is actually knowledge being visualized for an immersive application. And then it is integrated with the programmers and the developers using your traditional UX process to reduce errors. But unlike traditional, user interface design or UX design, you want to increase time on task, right? You want to actually increase the dwell time so that people have the leisure to explore and inquire at the breadth and depth of their desire. And then you also want to ensure that the learner's experience, both subjective experience, is pleasurable and high and enjoyable, but you might, if you care about real learning or actual learning, run a pre-test and a post-test and evaluate whether or not your product yields actual learning gains. And I found up to 40% in pre-test, post-test differences. Furthermore, because you want to have an actual impact, or you are producing it for real stakeholders like museums that are using it, in educational outreach, it has to be deployed. You have to get it on Apple's iTunes and Google Play and other kinds of distribution channels. And then you have to be designing it in such a way that it's representing the constraints of those distribution channels as well as what the public actually has in their pockets. So that makes it impactful. This makes it true. This makes it impactful. So use the ELEX process. I like it. The process, if it's a good process, it yields a good product. That's my belief. And I think that what you're trying to create in these artifacts are objects or environments that have high information fidelity for learning. And these are linked. So the idea here is to increase the information fidelity when you have learning applications as a requirement. Because if you are learning, you need to have high truth. You need to have high accuracy. You need this information fidelity to be very high. For immersive applications, there is a link, but it's not direct. It's orthogonal between high information fidelity and high graphical fidelity. You know, you can have a book with high information fidelity, right? And it has no graphics whatsoever. But when you are building applications that are immersive for learning requires that the information fidelity is high, but the immersive applications require that they're photorealistic too, right? And there's a way of thinking about having high information fidelity that will also automatically yield the high photorealism. That's not important for anything that has low information fidelity requirements, such as games or story or art. These fantasy applications have low information fidelity, but they are different or orthogonal to, separate from, the graphical quality. You can have a photorealistic game that is fantasy with low information fidelity, right? It's not important, but for a museum educational outreach application using immersive technology, you need high information fidelity. And then part of that is communicating the detail and the complexity visually. So you also need the photorealism and the high photorealistic fidelity. So these are related between information fidelity and learning applications. All right. So we're knowledge visualization experts here. We're talking about fusing information from the most trusted sources for the highest truth value, and then take the visual form is the byproduct. So accuracy was assured in the process, enhancing the information fidelity. The photorealistic graphic quality of that visual content is displayed as a byproduct of the information fidelity. But it's expected to increase the immersive quality and the user experience of presence, of course. Knowledge visualization is important for these immersive learning applications in museums. I found that in my study, the general public behaved like they were actually in a real woodland forest. They were running around the gallery and they were getting down on the floor and looking at the flowers with great excitement and enjoyment. So there's more work to be done here. I do want to thank and acknowledge my great partners, John Wenzel at the Carnegie Museum and Powder Mill, Patrick Nolan at the UCF Arboretum, all of my wonderful students. There's Kelly Black, Zach Bledsoe, Chris Jones, Thomas Pring, and James Miller. They're all fabulous and wonderful, as well as many other people who supported and were part of this project. And they're just incredible people. So I'm very grateful. Anyway, please feel free to contact me. My email is maria.harrington@ucf.edu, or go to the Harrington Lab, virtualnature.org, or maybe just download the software and have fun. But I hope to hear from you. Thank you. Bye.